move on to the final keynote, which is me. What I'm going to do is talk a little bit about, take you on a journey actually through the enhancement themes, because it is 10 years that we've been in existence. We've been running the themes. We started out after a shaky start. I think we've made real progress, and we've come to a point now where the sector is confident about the way it wants to take forward key areas of interest to the sector through this enhancement theme approach. What I'm going to do is just look back a little where enhancement came from, because our approach has diverged actually in many respects from other parts of the UK, what the themes today look like, the impact, and that's the tricky bit, that's the bit we're trying to grapple with, and we're looking to the future about how we measure impact and assess what's working and what's not working. What we in the sector value, and I'm taking the liberty of interpreting conversations I've had with my colleagues over the last couple of years about what it is we value about enhancement themes and the enhancement culture. And then looking forward to how we plan to raise the bar. And I think you can see with Mike Russell's comments this morning that it's always about trying to do things better for our students. If we look back, in 1991 the kind of binary system of universities was dissolved in the UK, and a quality assurance system was introduced, and that was UK-wide. And when I was a lecturer first in the University of Glasgow, I remember doing the teaching quality assessment and lots of boxes and ticks about whether you got excellence or satisfactory or whatever. And over the years, probably over the first 6 or 7 years of that, quality, certainly my memory of it was data collection. It was about performance scrutiny. It was important as to whether you got a satisfactory or an excellent, or how many you got of them. And it was somehow the business and administrative part of the job. And often there was a lot of resistance to it, and it was seen as something that was done to certainly the subject area that I was working in. And that concern about the process really grew. And there was a group working at that time, the Higher Education Quality Council, before the QAA was established, who were thinking about maybe we could do things differently, asking institutions to be more reflective, getting the sector to think about things that were problematic across the sector as a whole. Because let's face it, if you think about the issues that our Laurie and Amy and Randy, you know, the environment they explained to us they observed over the last couple of days, we're all facing many of similar challenges. And maybe as a sector, the thinking at that time was we could actually, this group, the Higher Education Quality Council, maybe we could actually, really that was the seeds of an enhancement, an approach to enhancement. However, that didn't happen, and a new TQA was about to be introduced, which was based on an audit function. And actually it wasn't the Scottish sector, it was a group of universities in the UK called the Russell Group, who were really unhappy about the audit approach, and really unhappy, I guess, more about intervention and people scrutinising what they were doing. And so there was an opportunity in Scotland for us to change, and some key people who were in thinking about enhancement in the 90s got together with our partners in Scotland, and a new system was designed, and we were given the liberty to think creatively about that. And the partners at that time who got together around the table were the Scottish Funding Council, the National Union of Students of Scotland, the University of Scotland, which is the organisation that represents universities, and QAA Scotland. And it was designed at the beginning in a very collaborative way. There was an absolute commitment to moving from an assurance culture to an enhancement culture. And the negotiations and how it was developed were very much based on a consensual approach. And since then, we have a fifth partner who's come into that framework of discussion, which is the Higher Education Academy. But they were the four initiating partners in the discussions. And I believe it was that consensual approach to those initial negotiations. The aim was definitely to conceive consensus and to get the sector on board, laid the foundations for the future, and the foundations that we do have adopt that consensual approach in the things that we do. The whole aim of the system at that time was that quality would not be seen by staff like me who were new into institutions as something that was done to us and a tick-box exercise and a bureaucratic process, but that I would own the concept of quality in the classroom. There would be the centrality of student engagement so important in shaping our quality processes, and now we've gone beyond that in actually being partners in developing the learning environment and the curriculum, and a real movement towards student-centred learning. So they were the aims at that time in around the early parts of 2000, 2001, 2002. And so in 2003, Scotland set up its new quality framework called the Quality Enhancement Framework, or QEF, and there are 5 threads to this framework. Enhancement-led institutional review, that's where we have external review of the institution, ELIR. Internal review, which is led by the institutions, generally around subject areas. Greater and clarity about the public information about quality, so stakeholders outside the university sector can understand how it is we monitor quality, we progress it, we develop it. Much greater student representation in the management and progression and development of quality, and at that time a national programme of enhancement themes, which is what we're celebrating today, this conference, 10 years of it. And I suppose for me what that meant was that kind of framework said to me, what we're doing is trying to seek improvement through understanding if what we do makes a difference, if when we change it, does it make a difference, and how it is that students learn, and within the changing environment we are, how we can continually develop. And something that sometimes I think we may not think enough about is that in order to do that, to seek to improve through understanding the environment we're in, and particularly with it changing all the time, is that we should be, as institutions, supporting research into our own processes around developing the learning environment, around quality, and the development of our processes. And that's something that I think we should bring to the fore, that as institutions, and Mike mentioned this morning, all Scottish institutions are research institutions. That's something that we should always keep in our minds. The purpose of the enhancement themes, so I'm just going to pluck out the enhancement themes as the focus of the rest of this presentation this morning, is to encourage staff and students to share current good practice and collectively to generate ideas for innovation in learning and teaching. And the whole purpose of doing that, the overarching aim, is to enhance the student experience. That's why we have been here, set up to do the work. I've called this the first try because it was the first try. We started out in 2003 with 2 themes a year, and they were steered by representatives from a subset of institutions who were chosen, I'm not quite sure how, but because I wasn't involved at that time, but it was a subset of people. And very quickly, well, within a couple of years, 3 or 4 years, the institutional feedback was, well, the themes were too prescriptive. We're not quite sure who decided we would focus on these. That's not to say they weren't good themes. The outcomes, the kind of whole process was not embedded. And it was not clear for institutions how we should engage with the enhancement themes. It was kind of something new that was happening. It was interesting. Most people are curious about new things, but it wasn't quite clear how we should engage. And the themes, I guess because there were 2 a year, it felt a bit project-based. It felt a bit, well, this is a discrete project and it'll happen, and sometime the outputs will come, and then we'll be on to the next thing. So in I think it was around 2005, we decided that there should be more leadership around the enhancement themes, and so the Scottish Higher Education Enhancement Committee was established. And initially it was established with that same notion of a subset of representatives being on it, and we quickly realised that that's not the way forward. Scotland is small enough, with 19 higher education institutions, that everybody can be around the table. And so we changed that pretty quickly so as that now all institutions are represented on the committee. We have a student member and we have a range of observers, and you'll see those observers are the people who set up this, who were involved in the collaborative discussions when the whole quality enhancement framework was put in place. So their input to what we do and how we do it is so important to us, to make sure that we're bringing everybody with us as we move forward. It is managed, the enhancement themes are managed by Quality Assurance Agency for Scotland, and managed very well in that respect. And the role of SHEIC is to agree the themes, so we consider what is it as a sector we want to focus on, we monitor progress, and we oversee the dissemination. And the latter, the dissemination, is something we've been grappling with over the last couple of years. How can we make dissemination more effective? But we've also extended to do many other things, and have developed a range of projects. So we're looking at indicators of enhancement. That's a current piece of work we're doing this year. Again, I mentioned in the beginning, very important to know if what we're doing is making a difference, to look at impact. So we're taking time to look at, can we develop indicators of enhancement that are useful to institutions as they strive to improve the quality of the student experience. And we have had a series of projects that have been hugely valuable for the sector, called Learning from International Practice. So we've looked at student support mechanisms, and the current one, which some of you may have heard the session at the conference already, is on the postgraduate experience, the concept of mastersness, how we look at transitions of students into master's programs and out into employment. So a lot of input SHEIC has had now into shaping the enhancement agenda. So what are the enhancement themes we've done? Well, if we look back, I clustered them because it was quite interesting when thinking about it, that actually we did 7 themes in the first 5 years, and 2 in the next 5 years, and actually it'll be 6 years for the next 2. And that is about that learning experience. We were completely overwhelmed in the beginning, and we were suffering from that kind of initiative fatigue, another theme. So we learned gradually. The first year was the one that began to extend, and then the research teaching linkages. And when we came to graduates for the 21st century, that was, if you like, a change in our approach, and it was a very effective theme from that respect. And the current theme is developing and supporting the curriculum. And what we did with graduates for the 21st century is the sector kind of said to us after the first 7 themes, you know what, this is so overwhelming. You know, we've done assessment, we've done the first year, we've done research teaching linkages, we've so much information. We really need a bit of breathing space to try and look at how we are embedding the things that we talked about, the things we said we wanted to do, the innovations. How are we going to embed that in our institutions? And so graduates for the 21st century said, okay, we'll just say, the basic premise was, okay, we'll ask institutions, what are the attributes that they think their graduates, not Scottish graduates, but their university graduates need for the challenges of the 21st century? And we'll use the information and the thinking and the ideas from the previous 7 themes to inform how we take that forward. So many of those attributes, those kind of clusters of attributes you will see up there, I'm sure you all subscribe to. They are not Scottish attributes. They are a clustering of the attributes that institutions came up with. If you overlaid any particular university, they wouldn't be quite like that. but there are lots of commonalities, and indeed there's lots in common there with the attributes that Imi talked about in their reimagining the curriculum, and Randy earlier on. So graduates for the 21st century lasted 3 years, gave institutions that time to define what is it that we're looking for, and now we can use the outputs from former themes and take on to the next stage how we're actually going to deliver those. The current theme clearly arose from that, because once you've said, yeah, this is the kind of attribute, these are the kind of attributes, this is the graduate we want for the 21st century, this is really what we hope we will manage to encourage in our graduates, then you've got to think about, so how does the curriculum fit that, and our pedagogies and our learning environment? And so the objectives of the current theme, developing and supporting the curriculum, arose from our previous theme. And they are, how is the curriculum shaped and delivered? We know the end point. How are we going to shape and deliver this to get this? Who is it for? Because our student body is changing all the time. Different people coming back into education. And really importantly, and sometimes I had felt kind of neglected in the past, is what support is required for staff. You know, I came into the university in sector in 1989 as a lecturer, and the only training I had was how to project my voice. I didn't have any training on how students learn, what it is to have learning outcomes, how it is to design your curriculum. So we wanted to really pull that out. What support is there for staff? Early career staff, it's much better now, but for more mature staff, shall we say. So developing and support, what does that mean across the sector? Well, it means how we're broadening the curriculum. So we mentioned multidisciplinary approaches, cross-disciplinary interactions. We've heard things about interprofessional education in our papers this morning. So it's about broadening the curriculum, how we assess for these graduate attributes, because that, you know, there are a lot of graduate attributes there that aren't classically thought of as being in our curriculum. So it's about broadening and extending that, as we link into the curriculum for excellence reforms that have happened, and also link into what is it employers are seeking from our graduates. We also have, so that's what institutions are focusing on, and they won't all be doing the same things. It will be what is relevant within their strategic context. We have 3 sector-wide projects about staff, enhancing their teaching, how it is institutions are doing that, so as we can come up with ideas and share good practice. The flexible curriculum, what flexibility in its broadest sense, and that engagement with curriculum for excellence, and Mike spoke about that this morning. Very important that we are prepared for the students who come in and say, so what is my learning outcome? Today, I believe the enhancement themes are in a much better place than when we started out. The theme duration, I could have put 3 years, but it might not always be 3 years. We might go back to a 1 year, or we might go to a 2 year. They will be appropriate for what it is we want to do. There has been a gradual shift from product, i.e. the books that are on the end when we publish them at the end of the day, and then they sit in people's desks or on your floors and never get read, to process. It's about engaging in the debate, and that's the really crucial aspect of it. The huge involvement, absolute core of Sparks, our student representation, and we'll hear more about Sparks in the panel session at 12 o'clock today. I mean, they have really driven so much within our sector. Very important, as somebody said, I think it might have been Randy earlier in the week, looking outside. We're very aware that Scotland is a small place and that we need to have input from our international advisors. So our themes do have international advisors. And within that, in development of our enhancement themes, for me, the quality enhancement framework provided stability for us. So things that can be very hard is when policy is changing all the time. But for us, the stability of the quality enhancement framework has given us space and time to think about the student experience. I believe institutions are on side. Every institution now in an enhancement theme has an institutional enhancement theme. They all contain a student member, and those student members have now a student network which is supported by Sparks to think about the project around the enhancement theme of the day. There is modest funding, but it has never ceased to amaze me how much value you can get out of very tiny amounts of funding when you put it towards teaching and learning or the student experience. It has always astounded me. And it has been a great lever. The QAA puts in modest funding to support it. Every institution has a plan and outcomes around the theme. And what institutions are reporting to us is that they have a sense of ownership and alignment of the themes with what they want to do strategically, which is not surprising because we've all decided in advance what it is the theme is going to be. And they have much more increased focus on student experience and student engagement. And policy approaches, so the government and the funding council environment that we have been developing in over the last 10 years continue to encourage collaboration. Somebody asked me earlier, how do you get everybody to collaborate and not compete? And I think the environment we have at the moment has supported a collaborative approach. I did mention the importance of evaluation and impact, and this is something that is hard to measure, hard to evaluate the impact of the enhancement themes. The Quality Enhancement Framework has been evaluated many times. And I think one, perhaps, indicator of the robustness and the, of the framework is the fact that nobody's crying out for change after 10 years. In fact, we thought there might be a bit of change around 2007, and we were all saying, well, no, we're on a good trajectory. So I think that's a good indication of that it is appreciated. Now, you could say that's just a sign we're being complacent, but I think you'll get from our minister our cabinet secretary this morning that we're constantly exposed to challenge. The themes have been evaluated on 2 occasions, 2006, 2008, and what they indicated in those reports was that there was growing institutional commitment and senior level buy-in, positive influence on sharing best practice and collaborating across the sector. Number of staff involved in department learning and teaching work was growing, and institutions were reporting very positive outcomes. But there was also a series of recommendations about work that needed to be done. And if you think 2008, it was 5 years, we were still in that pretty hectic cycle. We are actually looking at QAA is looking at evaluating the themes again at the moment. But the things that we felt weren't clear how well we percolated down to, if you like, at the coalface, to how much were the outcomes of the themes actually changing that practice in the classroom. But as I mentioned, the impact of the themes themselves, I feel, are very hard to disentangle from other causes of change within the sector. So one thing that I mentioned earlier is I think the satisfaction with the quality enhancement framework as a whole has meant that we have become more developmental in our approach to institutional review. We are operating in what we feel is a collegial, supportive environment with that element of challenge from our government and from our funding council to make sure we're always looking to improve. So it is hard to say, so within that environment, what have enhancement themes done? What I think in summary is that they have been a catalyst for many enhancement activities. So they have supported the rest of the framework and been a catalyst for the work that we have all been doing in our institutions. I just thought I'd note some of my favourite things about the enhancement themes. I don't hold the learning and teaching portfolio, but when I did, the whole move from insurance to enhancement kind of was embedded within our strategic institution in my university. And I think for many people from universities around Scotland, that is definitely in evidence. I really think we've improved the student experience because of that. The work on graduate attributes, the work that came out of the Learning for International Practice, the student support, huge. The first year, I remember our retention working group taking lots of lessons learned and basically chatting to other people around the first year experience that has helped make a difference in our institution. So I think we have improved. We've loved the international focus because you can become a little bit insular. It's always good to know what's going on and learn from other people. The profile of learning and teaching has been raised, in my view, in the last probably 10 years in institutions in Scotland. And you may say, well, it's still not high enough, but it is valued in a way that maybe it wasn't many years ago. And I think it has inculcated within our universities the culture of reflection. So we have been given the space, the time and the encouragement to reflect on what we do. And I think I can speak for most people when I say one doesn't feel you're going to be bashed around the head if something hasn't quite worked. So that's a huge step forward to give the sector the confidence to innovate and try new things and take the agenda forward. And I suppose for me, a big win has been student engagement. The role of Sparks has been critical in this, a fantastic organisation, what they've done in supporting student engagement. I think we've more or less cracked, and people from Sparks may disagree with me, the first point there, effective student representation and engagement with quality management. I think that's very well embedded within our institutions. Engaging students as partners in the learning, developing the curriculum, that's something we really have to work more on at the moment. It's hard, which is why I guess we're doing it now. You do the easier bits first, but that's an area that we're committed to working hard on. Looking forward, what challenges do we have? I mentioned just my interpretation of the QEF was I think we should be engaging in this institutional research to know if what we've done has made a difference, because it's a very complex environment and maybe that's hard to do, but it's something we should give thought to. More around student empowerment and that involvement in developing their curriculum and shaping it. Discipline level engagement, one of the themes, or a couple of the themes, have worked on a discipline basis. And I think that's a way of accessing frontline academic practitioners in a way that sometimes the broad integrating themes don't do. So we've got to work hard at making sure we get discipline level engagement. And we have a challenge ahead. Our last two themes have been very broad and integrating. Do we keep that sector, the integrating theme approach, or do we go back to the sector saying we have an issue here with, I don't know what it might be, say the first year or whatever, let's focus work on that. So that's something we've got to think about and discuss as a group. I did mention, what would I say that we valued? So one of my favourite places in Scotland, I thought, this is what I value about the quality enhancement framework. I value the autonomy, and Mike spoke this morning about responsible autonomy, and I think that's a very good phrase for our institutions. Universities should behave in our society. Partnership working, those initial 4 partners and then the 5th partner coming in, very, very important and very highly valued. And partnership working, not just with students in the University of Scotland, but with each other, which is in contrast to some other areas of university business. The stakeholder support we have had from employers, from students from across the sector. And also that level of trust that now I believe we have established that the university sector, the higher education sector, can be trusted to look in and see what they're not doing right and what they might do better. And a particular, the QA Scotland would be probably highly embarrassed to see that, but I do value the work that QA Scotland has done, and I know my colleagues do. I think it's a very difficult one to be the QAA who manage the auditing, if you like, the enhancement agenda, the institutional reviews, and also are there to encourage and support people and drive the enhancement agenda forward. And they do this in a magnificent way. So we value the QAA at Scotland. Raising the bar, as I come to the end, well, we have a chic strategy which we launched last year about working together, fostering and embedding a culture of quality enhancement. And we have set ourselves 5 objectives. One is around leadership and influence, because we want to enhance the capacity and capability of teaching, leadership around teaching at all levels of our institution. I mentioned research and showing evidence. We really want to grow our evidence base about the innovations and the ideas. Are they actually, are what we think happening actually happening in reality? And then that will lead to better planning and better decision-making in institutions. We want to extend our reach and engagement. Internationalisation is a key objective, to embed that quality culture and evaluation, and that's an area of work we're already on, being helped by Murray Saunders and his colleagues. How do we monitor the impact and effectiveness of our work? So a final thought, it's still early days, although it's 10 years old. It's still early days in my view, but I believe we have evolved and developed a sustainable approach to shaping improvement in what we do to the benefit of improving the student experience. I think it's been creative because although we're a small sector, we're very diverse. We have institutions of very different size and very different missions. And I do believe we we're nearly there, we've got to a point where student-centred is really where we're at. So I hope that's been a helpful a journey, a nostalgic journey for some, and for others I hope it's helped you for some thought when you go back to your own countries to think about how you take forward improvements and enhancing the student experience. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any quick points or comments to make before we move on to our parallel sessions?
Hi, Ido Ogerski, Queen Margaret University. I wonder if you can say a little bit more about something you said at the beginning, which is what I think is quite important, is the consensual approach. How does that actually work in practice?
How does it work in practice? Maybe I should ask some of my colleague committee members to say how it approaches. I mean, we come together as a committee, Chic does, 3 times a year. One of those times this year we did an overnighter where things are bothering us, so we want to know, well, you know, when we were doing the strategy, we did a long day to try and think what are the key things we want to do. So we come together, and I suppose the focus of our work, we put ideas on the table, and over time we will think about what it is we want as a sector to work on. And we will do scoping work around any area, bring that back to the committee to say, well, look, this is the scoping we've done. So we do a lot of preparation before we decide on a theme. This is the preparation we've done. These are the areas people are interested in. These are not. What will we follow on? And then we go for it, really. That doesn't sound like a very impressive answer, but it's a process of negotiation. Do we have any other committee members who might comment on that, how we develop that consensus? I do think that, I wasn't there in the beginning, and I do think that the way that the whole framework was developed set a pattern of behaviours and interactions, a style that took root very quickly. Does anyone have any comments? Sorry, who? Oh, Rowena, thank you. A comment from one of our committee members.
Sorry, difficult to believe that you aren't visible when you're wearing a jacket of this colour. I just wanted to respond to that request for other committee members by taking us back to one of Andrea's points, which is that all the institutions are at the table. And when we met in February, I was on a table discussion with a number of colleagues from some of the smaller institutions in Scotland, and they said very strongly that one of the things that they most valued was that they've had an equal place at the table. There isn't a hierarchy. So in answer to the question, I think one of the ways in which we establish consensus and collegiality is by being equal partners at the table, and that's institutions and students. So I hope that's helps.
Thank you, Rena. That's brilliant. Okay, I think it's just after 10 o'clock, so you're heading off to parallel session 6, which will last about an hour and a half. Themes around empowering students, impact of national policy, and again, curriculum innovation. I would urge you all to be back in the hall just before 12 when we have our plenary panel session. We're talking about student engagement in higher education with Liam Burns, Johan Gardebo, and Eve Lewis will be chairing that session. I guarantee you it'll be a great session, so look forward to seeing you here at midday. Thank you.